Well, welcome to the amazing collection, The Bible for Women, book by book, and I am so glad you could join us today because we are going to be looking at the book of the Song of Solomon. And it is well, you may be a little shocked to see what's in the Bible. It is a book about romantic love, and parts of it really are just amazing. Listen to what the writer of Proverbs wrote. Proverbs 30:18 through 19. There are 3 things that are too wonderful for me, 4 things that I do not understand. The way of the eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship in the middle of the sea, and the way of a man with a maiden. You see, love is a mystery. It is a mystery. Who can figure it out? Now, Solomon wrote those words. He was the wisest man in the world. And if he can't figure out love, chances are you and I can't either. If you will, just open to the Song of Solomon. This is the last of the 5 poetical books. It is a beautiful love poem. Actually, it's considered one of the most exquisite love poems that have ever been written. It is a dramatic poem. It tells a story. However, you're going to find that there's some problems with this book. You're going to run into some confusing things. They figure that it was written by Solomon. Now, it doesn't say it was written by Solomon, though his name is mentioned 6 times. But here's why we think it was Solomon. There are 21 plants mentioned in this little poem. There are 15 animals. It was a man that had a great deal of knowledge. Solomon had a great deal of knowledge. It talks about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom and calls it Israel. So this was before the kingdom divided. Solomon would have been the perfect author for this book. It obviously takes place in Israel, and it is believed that he probably wrote this book in his younger years, before his heart was divided and turned away from God. Here are some of the problems that you're going to find with this book. There are absolutely no religious themes. Therefore, you'll never hear anything about sin or grace or the temple or law. There are no religious themes at all. In fact, there's one time that the word Lord is mentioned, and even that, scholars are a little divided as to whether that means God. So it is a book with no religious themes. There are different interpretations. For instance, in the early Jewish communities, they believed that this was an allegory between, and it described the relationship between God and Israel. Later, Christians made it a typology and said it was a story that was about the relationship between Christ and the church. But honestly, ladies, if you read this, it's a hard stretch for that. We are going to address this as a literal interpretation, that this is a love poem, and it is a poem that describes the beauty, the passion, the sexual passion between a man and his wife. Well, when we get to the book of the Song of Solomon, the writer knows something about love. When you open the book, chapter 1, the first line that it says is, "This is the Song of Songs." Now, you have heard the term Lord of Lords, that Christ is Lord of Lords, King of Kings. And what that means is that he is the highest Lord above all the lords. He is the highest King above all the kings. This is the highest song above all the songs. This song stands head and shoulders above all the songs that have ever been written. And what we are going to start with right here is the courtship. We are going to get into it very quickly. It will cover chapters 1, 2 to 3, 5, and it is the courtship. First thing that Solomon is going to just paint such a passionate picture for you is their mutual admiration for one another. They admire one another as people. The woman starts speaking first. She is referred to in many Bibles as the Shulamite, and it goes like this. "May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Your oils have a pleasing fragrance. Your name is like purified oil. Therefore, the maidens love you." What is she saying here? She is saying, of all the men in the world, you are the finest. No wonder all of those girls love you. You are the very best. And she longs for him to kiss her. May he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. She is waiting for him to take the first stand. If you will turn with me then to verse 15, he responds, listen to his words. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like doves. Now I want to stop right here a minute. When you come across this, you are going to come across a lot of things that he compares her to, such as, your eyes are like doves. And you're going to think, that's pretty silly. That's pretty silly. That's not the way we talk today. And some of them you're going to laugh right out loud. What I'm going to do is encourage you to think a little farther down the road as where he was. What he is saying to her is that of all the things in the natural world that he can see, he compares the finest of those things to her. And so when he says, your eyes are like doves, he is saying that they are bright, they are alert, they are innocent, they are pure. He is giving her the highest compliment. He is not making mockery of her. Instead, he is complimenting her. And she goes on in 2:4 and says, he has brought me to his banquet hall. His banner over me is love. What a picture. She is secure under that banner, under his protection. That banner over her is love. He will respond to her. Now I want you to listen carefully. In 2:7, Solomon is speaking. And he is speaking to a group of other women. It could be her friends. It could be the other women in the court. We aren't sure, but he says this, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field, that you do not arouse or awaken my love until she pleases. Do you know what he's saying here? Do not sexually arouse her until it is the appropriate time. He is putting boundaries on their courtship. He is putting boundaries on their love for one another. It is not the appropriate time. They are not married. She is not under the protection of marriage. And so Solomon himself puts boundaries on it. In verse 14, this is 2:14, he again goes on, my love in the clefts of the rocks and the secret place of the steep pathway. Let me see your form. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your form is lovely. I am so grateful that God put these words in the Bible, because sometimes we can get the idea that holy courtship should be passionless, that holiness is devoid of pleasure and passion. And yet God is showing us a picture of what he puts his stamp of approval on for the love relationship. This man is saying to this woman, let me see your form. I just love looking at you. You are so beautiful. Let me just enjoy the picture. And that he is speaking from his heart, and God puts his stamp of approval on it. And now the chorus speaks in verse 15. And once again we are reminded that passionate love without the benefit of marriage must be protected by boundaries. Catch the little foxes for us, the little foxes that are ruining the vineyards, while our vineyards are in blossom. In other words, while we are passionately in love, don't let any of the little foxes come in that will ruin this relationship. Again, the relationship is to be protected within the passionate love that they have for one another. If you will turn with me, please, to verse 5. Chapter 3, verse 5. He will again emphasize the idea that there are boundaries on this love. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the hinds of the field, that you will not arouse or awaken my love until she pleases. Boundaries. You see boundaries on her side and boundaries on his side. By the time we come to this verse, we are ready for the kids to get married, because they have expressed mutual love for one another, mutual admiration for one another. And now it's time for the wedding. We will not be disappointed. Verse 6, chapter 3, verse 6. What is this coming from the wilderness, like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all scented powders of the merchant? Behold, it is the traveling couch of Solomon, 60 mighty men around it. Of the mighty men of Jerusalem, all of them are wielders of the sword, experts in war. Each man has his sword by his side. What is this? This is a military wedding. Solomon is coming for his bride, and he is bringing warriors so nothing will interfere with it. And it goes on, it says, Solomon has made for himself a sedan chair from the timber of Lebanon. He has made its posts of silver, its back of gold, its seat of purple fabric, with its interior lovingly fitted out. By the daughters of Jerusalem, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and gaze on King Solomon with the crown with which his mother has crowned him on the day of his wedding, on the day of his gladness of heart. Is this boy happy? This boy is happy. He can hardly wait. He has brought warriors with him to protect him, to make sure that he gets to his bride. And he has spent a lot of money on this celebration. He has made sure that this is a day set aside for the celebration of the joining of these two people who love one another so much. Well, that young man that dropped me in the ditch, I kept up with him, and I never stopped loving him. 5 years later, we finally got to the age where we could get married, and I was away from home during that time. And my mother gave me the gift of doing my wedding for me. So I would just call home and say, Mama, I'd like these flowers, and Mama took care of it. It was a wonderful present. And I came home just a few days before the wedding day, and I could not believe all of the work that had gone into this celebration. You see, like you all, Mama had a circle of girlfriends around her, and they really loved one another, and anytime there was a big celebration going on, they all came together and helped each other. And those precious ladies, those dear ladies, had just poured themselves out to make this wedding a great and beautiful celebration. And like so many of you, when you remember that day, I remember standing at the top of the aisle of the church on my father's arm and looking down that aisle at that man. And I could not believe or just hold in the great joy that I felt. And as I started down that aisle, I got about halfway down, and I want to confess to you, this was my thought. I can't wait till the honeymoon. I can't wait for the honeymoon. That this is such a beautiful, fun time, but what I'm looking forward to is a time when we can truly be one. I can't wait for the honeymoon. I think Solomon was thinking that same thing, because after the gladness day of the day of his gladness of heart, it gets right into the honeymoon. Now, I want to tell you, ladies, that this part of this book is very descriptive. It is very sensual, and you might be shocked. I want you to understand that God has put his hand of approval on this wonderful relationship between man and wife. You see, they have waited until a time where they could wrap that sexual experience under the banner, under the protection of married love, and now they are free to join one another